you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time.
All right, let me say good morning to everyone that's listening. You are now in contact with the Counter-Racist Code Show, also called the CRCS, with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, you simply call 516-453-9921 and be sure to press the number 1 button, and you will go to the top of the list or follow in if Mr. Fuller is addressing a question. You can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Now, I must tell you that if you do that, chances are your email will not be read. I'm just now at May the 12th. We have a tremendous backlog of Gmails, but we will try to get to them as many and as quickly as we can. Okay, so without further ado, let's do this. Mr. Fuller, I have a question from the Gmail from Justice Soldier, and he says this: problem solving requires you to face reality. Mr. Fuller, can you explain yet again that at present the reality is that there is no place on this planet where we can run to in order to get away from white supremacy? Regards, Justice Soldier.
Well, yes, according to the evidence and according to the terms that are used to describe the evidence, it's called, and more people are using the term, the system of white supremacy. Usually they just say white supremacy, but it's an entire system that covers economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And it's a world system that's designed to dominate and mistreat people of color, or people who have classified themselves as white, who choose to dominate and mistreat people of color in all of those 9 areas of activity at all times and all places. That's why it's called white supremacy. A lot of people refuse to use that term or say that they don't understand the use of the term, or they are uncomfortable with the use of the term, or that the term really is not accurate. But a lot of people do use it. I use it because I say it is accurate, and it is expressed in that manner. White supremacy, the system of white supremacy, racism. Racism is white supremacy, and it is the strongest, in my opinion. And according to the evidence that I have seen, it is the strongest and most efficient, most powerful government among people that the world has ever seen in all 9 areas of activity. And it affects, in that manner, being dominated and mistreated. It affects the people who are of color all over the planet. So, in answer to the question, there is no place on the planet Earth or any place in the known universe that I know of where a non-white person can escape the direct or indirect harmful effects of the system of white supremacy. And if someone knows of such a place, then everyone should know where that place is who is of color. And I would like to know.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't heard of any such place in existence now. But if someone knows, then they can just step forward and say, well, I've heard of this place, or I've been to this place, and then everyone who can go there, including myself, should go there and take a look and see if that place has limits or what people can do there, and if there are any black people there who are not beholden to the system of white supremacy in any way, form, or fashion, no connection with it, completely out of touch with it, don't know what you're talking about when you use the term white supremacy, and everybody is progressive and constructive, and it is a place where everybody would want to be who believes in being of constructive value. I would like to know of such a place, or if there's some vacant land somewhere where you can go and not be subject to the system of racism. They don't have access to you.
Mm-hmm.
They can't come there without your permission, and they can't do what they want to without your permission. I don't know of any such place. Never heard of it.
Okay. All righty. Let's go to the second one. Let's see here. This is from Damini. He says this. Greetings to you, Mr. Fuller. Have you ever heard of the term common sense? Is common sense the same as logic and using all my senses accordingly? What does it mean when you? What does it mean to you when people say use common sense?
Well, whomever uses the term should explain what it means. That's the compensatory way of doing things. Words are just words. They don't mean anything. No word means anything until you make it mean something. And so the person who uses a word, which is just a tool for getting a job done, you ask the person, what is this tool for? And what value is it of to me? And why are you using the term? What is it that I'm going to gain from the use of this term that I didn't have before I used the term? Because everything that you do as a creature here on what we call the planet Earth should help you to gain something of constructive value. That's everything. Everything that you touch, everything that you eat, everything that you see and hear should help you to come closer to being that universal man or the universal woman that will fit into the best that there is in the known universe. That should be the goal. So if somebody says common sense, you just simply ask that person, what do you mean by common sense? What's the difference between common sense and uncommon sense? And you can have a series of questions, only to the person who uses the term. That's how you do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Moving right along. Very good. Okay. Puma Knit says this, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, I've been listening to you speak about racism, white supremacy for a long time. You used to sometimes talk about the 10 stops. I found the 10 stops, plus the 2 added by Dr. Welsing, to be the perfect code for black people to work toward abolishing the system of racism, white supremacy. Mr. Fuller, can you please talk about the 10 stops and how this can be used as a tool for black people?
Okay. Yes, I can talk about it. The 10 that I had, and in the original textbook, it was on page 49, and I have that one in front of me.
Now, is that in the 1984 edition?
That's in the 1984 edition.
Okay.
And I do have it there, page 49 of the 1984 edition. And I'm turning to it now.
Okay.
And
question, Mr. Fuller is turning
yes,
to page 49 in the...
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so here they are, the basic 10 stops. Well, it starts off with stop snitching. Now, that was controversial back at that time, and it still is.
Yeah.
That's number one. But I had to embellish that in the 2016 edition and do a whole lot of explaining of what that means and what it really doesn't mean. Because a lot of black people, particularly black people who are in prison or greater confinement, they like that. They really latched on to that. And also a lot of black people who consider themselves gangsters, they like that. But it's not for them unless they are not of a gangster mentality. It's broadly speaking. It means that you don't do anything, you don't give out any information that will help the white supremacists to do what they do. And it says here the reason and explanations, even in the 1984 edition, is the snitch is to willfully and deliberately volunteer information about a person or persons with the specific intention of gaining direct or indirect personal favors and or praise from racists. See, it's within that context. It's strictly within that context. It doesn't mean that black people just run up and down the street killing other black people like many of us are prone to do, and then say, everybody keep quiet about it, because that's snitching. You snitched on me. I killed 15 black people today that over there in that other project or that other neighborhood, or who ain't in my neighborhood, or who I'm mad at. I don't want nobody to tell nobody nothing about it. Keep your mouth shut. No, the code says about that, and I updated that in the 2016 edition, that when anybody on the planet does unjust harm to anybody else, particularly when it comes to killing somebody, everybody on the planet should instantly know two things: who did it and why.
Okay. So that we can expedite time.
Expedite time, yes. I'll just keep moving.
Let's do... Go since she asked for those 10. You got snitching. Could you go down the list, and then if one sticks out
I'll
to
do
you
that.
after? Okay.
I'll do that.
You got stop snitching.
And next, stop name calling. Don't name call anyone.
Okay.
Never call anyone any name or title except the name and title of that person wants to be called under any circumstance.
That's number
if a person has, yes, that's number 2. And number 3, stop cursing.
Stop cursing.
Yes, stop using curse words. I mean, that doesn't improve anything. That doesn't improve you as a person.
All
There's
right,
no improvement in there. Number 4, stop gossiping. Gossiping is saying something about a person that you wouldn't say if the person is standing there right next to you.
Right in front of you. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Number 5.
Number 5, stop being discourteous. Never let anybody be more courteous than you. Number 6, stop stealing. Not even from people who have stolen from you, including the white supremacists. Stealing does something to you that's very detrimental to yourself.
Okay.
Stop robbing. Same thing. Robbing and stealing kind of goes along, except the difference between robbing and stealing is that if you rob somebody, that's right up front. You steal from somebody, they don't know who did the stealing.
Okay.
Number 8.
Yes.
Stop fighting.
Fighting.
Except in self-defense. Or comes under war in maximum emergency compensatory action.
Uh-huh.
Number 9. Stop killing.
Stop
except
killing.
in self-defense. Or in something dealing with maximum emergency compensatory action under war. And number 10, stop squabbling among yourselves and then asking the white supremacists to settle the squabbles.
Now, is squabbling
those are the 10.
arguing?
Hello?
Would you say squabbling is considered arguing?
Yes. Black people should never have an argument in the first place and then run to the white supremacists to settle the argument, which is what we do anyway.
Okay.
I mean, we do that in our so-called neighborhoods and whatnot.
Yes.
And then that, then we argue with ourselves, can't settle the argument. So we shouldn't have arguments to start with. I put that in the 2016 edition.
Let's do this. Okay, now, for those who are just listening, a Gmailer called in and wanted to know Mr. Fuller's 10 stops. So as review, number 1, stop snitching. Number 2, stop name calling. Number 3, stop cursing. Number 4, stop gossiping. Number 5, don't be discourteous. Number 6, stop stealing. Number 7, stop robbing. Number 8, stop fighting. Number 9, stop killing, except in the 9th area, which Mr. Fuller will not discuss over the air, and because it leads to confusion. They don't want to be confused about that. And number 10, stop arguing. Those are the 10 stops, and they're in the 1984 edition. They're not in any other edition, is it, Mr. Fuller?
Oh, yes. It's also in the 2016 edition.
Okay, 2016.
And in far more detail about, everything, the explanations, and particularly, number 1, stop snitching, because most people interpreted that as a license to just run all over black people and then get mad when somebody says, well, you snitched on me. I was out here, I had a free reign in the neighborhood. I was stealing and robbing from black people. I was killing black people. And then you snitched on me and you put a stop to it. Now, that's not what that means. It's not a license to go around doing things harmful to black people and then expect somebody not to tell on you. Mm-hmm. You need to be told on. You shouldn't even not be in existence if that's all you're going to do with the time that you have been given on this planet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, for those who have just tuned in, you can call 516-453-9921. Let me repeat that again, 516-453-9921. And make sure for your sake that if you use that number, press the number 1 button and you will go to the front of the line if Mr. Fuller is not addressing a question before you do that. Okay, let's see here. Let's go to the phone lines, and I think we're going to, if I can get you up here, Darnell, thanks. Darnell, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question, please?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning.
First of all, Mr. Fuller, I listened to the show last week, and I want to give a big thank you to Neely Fuller Sr. for the story that you shared with us last week in regards to naming all his businesses peoples and iterating to you that it's always about the people. I want to give a big shout-out to him because I think if he didn't relay that message to you, I don't think we would have the code book today. So I just want to give a big shout-out to Neely Fuller Sr. for relaying that message to you. Now I'll just move on to my question. A few weeks ago, I had a friend of mine that I went to high school with, played high school basketball with. He's a white, and with everything going on, he asked me, what could he do to help black people in our fight for justice. So I gave him the 9 areas of activities to start with, as well as the equation for peace. So my question to you, Mr. Fuller, if a white person was to call you that you had known for, 20, 30 years plus, and ask you the same question, what could he do to help people achieve justice, what would you tell him?
Okay, good question. Mr. Fuller?
Well, to start off with, and this is covered in the textbook for victims of racism, and I don't have the page number right now, but what you want white people to do, first of all, is that do not ever say anything to a non-white person, a victim of racism. Do not say anything to that person that is not true. I mean, always check your facts and make sure that you got what you're going to say to find out if it has truth in it, that it is all true. Don't say anything false. No mistakes there, because you stay on the racist suspect list from now on. That's a part of the code. If you're a white person and you say something to a black person that's not true, you are suspected of being a racist forever. So you make sure that what you're going to say is true. Don't ever lie, because deception is the deadliest thing that a white person can do to a non-white person. Any kind of deception, anything that comes anywhere close to being deceiving or confusing, because it causes confusion. Deception causes confusion. And black people are the most confused people on the planet. So when you add to that by saying something to a black person that's not true, and you're white, you should be suspected of being a racist and being a racist forever. I mean, that person should never trust you again for anything as far as the truth is concerned. They are forced to trust you because they're prisoners of war. But, I mean, as far as intent, they should never do it. So every white person that really wants to help a black person, don't ever lie to a black person, a person of color. Anything that you say has to be the truth. That's number one. And number two, now these are just 2 things out of a long list that are described in the textbook. It's in there of what you say to a white person that you want, because this is more important now than ever for black people who are out in the streets saying Black Lives Matter and whatnot. You got to have a list of things you want. Otherwise, Black Lives Matter doesn't mean anything. It's just a slogan. And people just chanting and fists in the air, and that's a feel-good expedition, but it doesn't really solve problems. You got to get into the details. So we should have a list, and that list, and a start-off list, is in the code book, the 2016 edition. Now, number 2, and I'm just going to mention just those 2. The first one is don't lie. And the second one is don't withhold constructive information ever on a job or any place else. That's another crippling thing. I mean, all the excellent information gets circulated around the office or the warehouse or wherever, and it passes right by the person of color, the non-white person, the black person, who is sorely in need of constructive information. And that's not only on job situations, that's anywhere, in schools. You make sure that little Ronnie, Kamina, or whomever in the 3rd grade, that they get the instruction that is being given in a way that they understand it. I mean, every white teacher is supposed to guarantee that child is not neglected or passed over when constructive information. You spend time with that child, with the understanding that he's handicapped or she is, just by the system of white supremacy itself. If you really want to help, you'll say, hey, you all have to excuse me for a while, but I have to give Lou Carmani here a little more instruction because he doesn't understand what's being said. Because this is happening even as we speak, wherever they have some type of instruction situation open. And that's in factories and everywhere else, on jobs, everywhere. Make sure, not that you're putting the information out, make sure that they're getting it and that they understand it and that they know how to use it. Not walking out of there with a piece of paper in their hand saying, I graduated, but you don't know anything that they had in that class, or you don't know but half of it, or a quarter of it. No, you're supposed to know everything and understand everything that was of constructive value. Now, not everything that is taught is constructive. So you can just skip over all that stuff that you know is not constructive for this person and just stick to the constructive stuff. Those two things are mandatory. And there's a list of about 14 or 15 things that you always ask white people to do.
I'll tell you what, Mr. Fuller, we have time if you can just give one more, because I'm looking at the clock here. So if you can give one more, I know you gave two. If you can give one more that just comes to your mind to complete the question for Brother Darnell.
Well, a white person should actively oppose racism in all of its forms, deliberately. Make that a mission in his or her existence. Why? Because it's the greatest stumbling block to having peace on this planet. Racism is the greatest of all opposition to that thing that we call peace, in parentheses, because we don't really have a definition for it, but theoretically it would be a combination of truth, justice, and correctness. That would equal peace. So every white person should commit him or herself right now, right this minute. I'm going to do everything I can to get rid of racism and replace it with a system of truth, justice, and correctness and peace. That would be that's the equation. You'll have peace when you get those three things in combination: truth, justice, correctness.
Okay, Mr. Darnell, thank you for your call. And as I usually say, do not be a stranger. Call back.
All right.
We appreciate it. All righty. Okay. Asante White, thank you for being in the chat room. Thought I would give you a shout-out. Mr. Fuller, one of the things that has been discussed recently, not on this particular program, but a statement that you have made several times. I have heard this statement. A lot of people are confused about this, and the statement was, and I'm paraphrasing, that you said that the white man's anus is the new black vagina and that the black vagina is becoming obsolete?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I tell you what, hang on to that, because what I'm going to do, because you want that explained in its entirety, I'm going to do a station break now so that we can get that all in. Okay, if you can start the music there, let's do this. You are now listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Now, to get in contact with the show, call 516-453-9921. Let me repeat that, 516-453-9921. Or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. Now, we are trying to go through that list, and we start out today on May the 12th, trying to get those done, and we did make some progress today. You write me, and I will at some point, can't tell you what time or day, but your Gmail will be read, so hang on to. Okay, Mr. Black, I hope you're listening, and I hope you heard that. You submitted a Gmail, but it's falling in rotation, and I'll get to it whenever I get to it. Okay. All right, again, the Counter Racist Code Show, CRCS with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Okay, Mr. Fuller, again, that question came up about the white man's anus being the new black vagina, and that the black vagina is becoming obsolete. Now, I'm paraphrasing because you may not have said that like that, but a lot of people are stunned by that statement. Can you clarify that, please, sir?
What the white supremacists are doing in the area of sex, they are absolutely dependent on, from the evidence that I have seen. And I'm making flat statements now, and I think they're true. They are absolutely dependent on doing a whole lot of things that look like they're helping black people make what we call progress. But they intend to use sexual confusion, which is described in the 2016 edition of the textbook. Racist sexual confusion. It's in there. They intend to confuse black people sexually as much as they possibly can in every way that they can, because they have figured that in the future, going into the next millennia and then the next millennia after that, if you really want to cripple a people, you confuse them sexually if you can't confuse them in the other areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, and they use religion to confuse non-white people. They've been getting away with that like forever. And all of the other areas of activity. They do a lot of it in politics. That's politics just means in basic relations. They spread confusion everywhere. Economics. The economics of the non-white people of the entire planet is astronomically, if I'm pronouncing the word correctly, confusing. But sex, for sure, if you confuse people sexually, you can control and dominate them and mistreat them over a more extended period of time, because sex is very basic. People have a strong sex drive that has to go somewhere. So if you get control of black people's sexuality, all right, and steer it where you think it ought to go, into oblivion, really, all right, into everything that is non-constructive. Get as far away from the male-female concept as you possibly can and send it into every type of thing, cats, dogs, whatever. But steer it in a way that will cause maximum confusion. Then you got them in the other areas of activity. It's very easy to steer them, in this type of la-di-da that and this type of that, and anything political and anything economic. I mean, the golden slippers that they had on black eunuchs in the Roman cathedrals and castles and whatnot, and in the Colosseums. I mean, sure, they all decked out, but what? Just like they do when they lynch a black male. They, castrate him. So they got all forms now of castration. You got all kinds of ways to do it. The first thing they do is castrate your mind and steer it into all type of sexual experiments that are not even sexual, but they'll still call it sexual. And they're saying you're being liberated. You're being improved. Hey, black boy, come here. I'm going to improve your sexuality. I mean, you're out here Porgy and Bess. I mean, Porgy chasing down Bess. Forget about Bess. She's obsolete. That vagina she's got is absolutely worthless. What you need is a new concept of where your phallus should go, and what phallus should go into you as a black male. Hey, I mean, listen, boy. I mean, wake up. Smell the coffee. This is a new era. We're getting rid of all that junk science about male, female, and all like. Just forget about that, because you're heading in that direction. And you might be universal man and universal woman. I don't want you nowhere near that, because then you are disturbing my arrangement that I have. I never want any of you black people to have sexuality that makes sense. So I'm going to put out all kind of glitz and glitter on a whole bunch of garbage, and I'm going to put it all among you and I am willing to go to any length, and this is the white supremacists talking, to black people, to give you any amount of money, put on any type of presentation, hand out awards for anything that has to lead to maximum sexual confusion among the non-white people of this planet, because everything that I'm gambling on in the future is going to use that as a focus, because that'll give me a longer time to dominate you. Because if I can confuse you sexually, I'll be able to confuse you in all other areas of activity with maximum ease, because you won't even want to do anything that makes sense after that. You'll just be answering a whole bunch of trivial nonsense.
Okay, so the focus is on the white man's anus?
For the time being. He'll come up with other things. He's probably got a whole litany, a whole schedule, a whole textbook, like they always do. When they start something, they got a lot of stuff, for what else? In all of their plans, they have a plan B and a plan C and a plan Q and whatever. But they got a whole arsenal. So this is just a tip of it. But the whole idea is confuse black people sexually.
Okay.
We absolutely have to depend on that in the future, because they're getting smarter and smarter. So we're going to ruin them sexually right out of the gate. So no matter how smart they get and everything else, if they're messed up sexually, we got them forever.
Okay. All righty. Let's do this here. Let's go to Bien, if I pronounce it correctly. Let me see if I can get you in here. Okay, Bien. Go ahead with your question for Mr. Fuller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. So Mr. Fuller, you always talked about how the non-white people of this planet should always engage in constructive activities. And in the process of being constructive, if we are consistent in that process and knowing that the white supremacists don't like the non-white people to be constructive, over time, in your book, you said, we're going to be able to make that ultimate decision. Now, should we practice justice, or do we have to get rid of all of the non-white people of the planet? So my question for you, Mr. Fuller, why is it that we should be working to push them to make that decision?
Because that's the way it's going to work anyway. A lot of white people are marching with black people saying Black Lives Matter. But in order for Black lives to really matter, all the garbage, the tacky, trashy, terroristic things that black people have been doing under the system of white supremacy, including to each other, these are the only relationships that we have. Tacky, trashy, terroristic, that's all we know. All of our relationships, so-called, are tacky, trashy, and terroristic. When you look at black people all over the world, all over the map, all over the entire planet, in all areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, war, it doesn't get any better than tacky. And if we try to improve on the tackiness in the system of white supremacy, it gets trashy, our so-called relationships. The moment we try to say, hey, our relationships are kind of tacky, they're really kind of sloppy. Let's get some decent relationships going on here. Between male and female and male and male. Black people, when you just look at us, we just walk around. We're just so tacky about everything. Nothing constructive about anything that we do, okay? So let's improve on it. Now, every time we try to improve on it in the system of white supremacy, the white supremacists intervene and take the tackiness into something trashy. But they're real skillful at that. It never gets any better than tacky. But if we don't like tacky and want to get into something that's constructive, they will steer it right into something that's trashy. If you even watch black people and white people when they come together, like they're all marching in the streets now, if they try to improve on that, I'm going to tell you how the white supremacists operate. Because it's not but three moves: tacky, trashy, terroristic. Now, the minute we try to improve on the tackiness, they say, well, black people and white people just kind of talk at each other. We don't really talk to each other. I mean, we're not even honest about our talk when we're around each other. I mean, we don't know what to do or what to say or how to act or anything, so we just make up stuff. But the white supremacists, they say, oh, I always know what I'm doing, even though black people never know what they're doing or why they're doing it. So now that they're talking about they don't want this tacky relationship that we have, well, we'll say we'll improve it. So they'll steer it right into that second T, trashy. And then from that second T, it goes right into the third one, which is terroristic. And black people have this type of arrangement with each other. It's called the tragic arrangement in the textbook for victims of white supremacy. Tacky, trashy, terroristic. All of our arrangements are that way, even the ones that we brag about and hand out awards about. It's just as tacky as they can be. Everything that black people do with each other is tacky, 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 tacky. That's at its best. And if we try to improve on that tackiness, then it gets trashy. Just watch it. Black people at a party and whatnot, it's tacky. The whole party is tacky. That's to start with. But we don't, we're so used to it, we don't think of it at all. It's tacky. We think that all that hugging and whatnot, and amen and high-fiving, that's just as tacky as it can be. There's no sincerity. There's nothing constructive about it. It's not going to wind up being constructive because it's going to go from that tackiness into something trashy. And if they try to improve on the trashiness after everybody gets all trashy and just laying around doing this and that and whatever anybody thinks about doing, then it's going to get terroristic. We're going to start shooting each other, and that's where the white supremacists come in to clean up the mess. You've never seen it any different from that. I haven't.
Yes, sir.
I've never seen it any different from that.
All righty. Okay, BN, thank you for your call, and don't be a stranger. All right, thank you so much. See if I can do this. Okay, there we go. All righty, let me do this. I think it's Daryl. Thank you, by the way, brother, the Gatewood brothers. The Gatewood brothers are making sure that we sound good. Thank you, my brothers. Okay, Daryl, you are... Yeah, there you go. Yeah, okay, Daryl, go ahead. What's your question for Mr. Fuller?
Hey, Mr. Fuller. I realized that code that she said on my job, because I work around on my shift, on the night shift, there's a lot of white people. I'm the only black person on my shift. So one thing I realized that usually most black people, when we're speaking, we like to just talk for like unnecessary things, unnecessary reasons, talk like a bunch of nothing, just random talk. And we're just talking, just going fast. But one thing I realized that these white people, they have a code when they're talking to you. It's just, you could see it if you pay attention. Like, they just slow everything down. They slowly talk to you. They ask a lot of questions, And then once I'm listening to your programs and everything, then I was like, then it clicked to me. I was like, you know what? I'll do the same. So I do the same, and I find that they're trying to figure me out when I'm doing it, like trying to know my personal life and stuff like that.
What is your question for Mr. Fuller there, Daryl?
So my question is, do you agree that the white people's code is the opposite of the black code?
Well, black people don't have a code. That's why we need one. See, we just have a tacky, trashy, and terroristic interaction with people. That's our brand. It doesn't get any better than tacky, just like I said, and this is described in the textbook over and over again in one form or another. And the white supremacists have our culture is tacky, trashy, and terroristic. That's black culture. I mean, sure, you find some black people that do halfway something that makes sense. Most of us do. I mean, on a piecemeal basis. But if you say black culture overall throughout the entire planet, you're talking about a tacky, trashy, and terroristic culture because the white supremacists have made it that way. Now, what is the culture of the white supremacists? The culture of the white supremacists is white supremacy. Racism. That's their entire culture. Dominating and mistreating people of color. And they are very scientific about it. There's nothing sloppy about it at all. They make very, 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 very few mistakes. And they make sure that everything that black people do winds up being a mistake if they watch it close enough. I mean, that's their goal, to take us around a long waltz, of doing this, keeping us active now. Black people are very active. Keep them moving. Keep black people moving. Have them doing something. Don't let them have time to do any thinking. That's the one thing. That's a part of the white code. Don't let them do any thinking. A thinking black person is dangerous. But let them run up and down the halls and scream and yell, and let them curse and talk loud and have their speakers going in the middle of the night, shattering all the sleep that people are trying to get. Let them do all that stuff and help them to do it. But don't let them get what you call smart slave quiet, like that slave on the plantation who wasn't always beating on the banjo or turning flips or making somebody laugh and strutting around acting like he was king of the plantation to the other black people. But that quiet, methodical black person is always watching the master. The master said, get rid of that Negro as soon as you possibly can. Sell him down the river to the Bodie plantation or wherever. But get him out of here, because a thinking Negro, thinking black person is dangerous and not good for the business of white supremacy. So don't let them think. Let them act. Let them talk loud. Keep them talking loud. We don't mind that, as long as they don't disturb us when we're thinking. All right.
Okay. All righty. Daryl, thank you for your call, and don't be a stranger. Okay, Mr. Fuller, it is 9:48 here Eastern Time. This is the time that we've set aside for you to discuss your book. And one of the things that is, you haven't done it at least today, but that definition or statement that is always at the front of the book. Some people who are new to the program, they haven't heard that. But as you begin to talk about your book, could you repeat that statement if you don't understand? You don't know what I'm speaking about.
Yes. If you don't understand white supremacy, racism, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Why? Because everything is connected. One area of activity is connected to another. Politics is connected to religion. People say, oh, no, religion is separate from politics. And it says so in the Northwestern Hemisphere. You always keep religion separate from politics. Well, it comes down to what is politics. See, that's another thing about counter-racist codification, which is what we need. You explain every word. So you say politics is people relations, people interacting with people. Then you ask, well, what is religion? See, religion is a strong belief backed up by action. And say, well, how can religion be separate from people when people say they have religion? It is people who say they have religion. I guess the birds and bees and the leaves on the trees have religion, but people also say they have religion. So if people interact with people in a religious setting and say that they're fallen. I hear people all the time saying we are of the same religion. Well, that's one person interacting with another. So that's what? If people are politics, police, polite, that's about people. You can't have a religion without having people. So if people are relating to people, then how can you separate religion from politics if politics is about people? And religion requires people in order for religion to exist. So if people exist and religions exist, then you can't have one without the other. So how can you separate them when they are mandatory? So all religions are political, and all politics is religious. Why? Because of the definition. Strong belief backed up by action. That's all any religion is. If you have a strong belief in something, but you're not backing it up with action, then you don't have that religion. Because that's the compensatory definition for religion. Any strong belief backed up by action. That's why the white supremacy, the system of white supremacy, is the strongest religion by evidence ever invented in the minds of people. There's never been, since the beginning of white supremacy, a religion stronger than the religion of white supremacy. That strong belief backed up by action. Did I answer the question?
Okay, so now we're speaking
did.
about your book and where we can get it and all that.
Yes, and you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is the process for ordering the basic textbook, also the original that came out in 1984, the revised expanded edition, which I call it the basic now, really takes in most of the stuff that's in the 1984 edition. So, but some people like the 1984 edition too. That's why I brought it back, start having it produced again. But the 2016 edition is the basic textbook for victims of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
It's the beginning, I hope, of a code for what? For getting rid of the system of white supremacy and replacing it for justice. And all the things that you say and do to do that. There's also a word guide there. But go to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com.
Okay. Jakari says this, Mr. Fuller. He says he hopes you're doing well. He said, does the code support blacks segregating themselves in the case that integration with whites continues to fail toward the elimination of white supremacy? Whites love to have us around to kick around because it gives them fun and glory. If we all moved away from them, then they would likely turn on each other. The same thing happened in Europe long ago. In my opinion, that is a great way to eliminate white supremacy by having white supremacists eliminate themselves. It's less work for us to do. That didn't really seem like a question. That sounded like VGQ to me, but let's see here. Does the code support blacks segregating themselves in the case that integration with whites continues to fail toward the elimination of white supremacy? So I guess that was his first question.
Well, I don't say that in my text, in the textbook I have written. Now, many people say that's the solution and have been saying it for years. But then I say, well, it could be. But there's a problem here. Go where? You're certainly not talking about going anywhere on this planet. And if you go to another planet, the white supremacists have to take you there. So that's still white supremacy. That's the logic. See, everything in counter-racist science has to be 100% logical. has to be pure. It has to make sense. Now, if white supremacy, that supreme means just that. Everywhere on this planet. There's no place on this planet that they don't know about. There's no hidden secret place or there's some addendum to the planet Earth that they haven't thoroughly researched every grain of sand or every drop of water on it. They know where it is. So if they know all of this, they know where the black person will be going, and you can't segregate or even integrate in a system of white supremacy. That's another thing. These are words that they invented, and they have been confusing ever since. They've been invented. Racial segregation, racial integration. The white supremacists are the usual suspects when it came to these words. I was always confused by it. When are you segregated? When are you integrated? And the answer is none of that makes sense. Those words don't mean anything under the system of white supremacy. You're not segregated and you're not integrated. You're not either one of them. You're not segregated. People say, well, that's separate, completely separate. No such thing. That has never happened, even when they had what they call racial segregation, as they say that they had. That never has been. Black people and white people have never been separate from each other since the beginning of white supremacy. That has never happened. They always have a connection with us. How are you going to whip your slave and you're separate? How are you going to dominate them? They say, well, what about the black people who cross the ocean and go to an island and whatnot? You're still dependent on them because it's their ocean. That's what I mean by supreme. They run the entire planet. No place on the planet you can go, and if you try to go, like I said before, to another planet, the first person you got to talk to is a white person because no non-white person knows how to get there. So they'll have to take you there, show you around, show you how to operate while you're there, because we don't know anything. We say, I can't breathe. Well, in some of these planets, you can't breathe unless you take your air with you. So they'll show you how to take your air with you so you can breathe. They're our lifeline. We are their prisoners of war. Black people have to understand that. We are their complete prisoners of war, 24/7, anywhere we go. And they dominate even our minds, even the things that we want. They tell us what we want. They tell us what day that, take off and do this and do that. They tell us what a celebration is. They even tell us and we are partying people. They tell us what a party is. But then they tell us how to really not have a party unless it's going to be corrupt. Because if there's anything constructive going on in that party, they're going to say, no, that's a no-no. Because black people, are never, ever supposed to do anything constructive unless there's a white person making them do it. That's white supremacist code.
All righty, this is what we're going to do. We are going to conclude the first hour. You heard about the 10 stops. You heard about racist sexual confusion and trashy, tacky, and terroristic. That concludes the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Stay tuned for the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show, CRCS, right here. All righty, let's do this. Welcome to the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Now, to get in contact with the show, call 516-453-9921. Now, when you do that, press the number 1 button, and that way you will go to the top of the line, or you're next if Mr. Fuller is not addressing another caller, or if there's another caller before you, you'll go after that. But be sure to give the screener your name so that I can properly introduce you as Michael has. because your name will come up. I mean, your phone number will come up, but there's nothing there, so I don't know who you are. So make sure that you do that. Okay. What I'm going to do is, okay, Michael, you are now on and can be heard worldwide. Go ahead, Michael, with your call for Mr. Fuller.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to speak to Mr. Neely Fuller. Thank you for keeping up the fight as strong as you have. My question is simply this. What legislation would need to be passed to assist us?
Oh, anything constructive. Legislation just means a law or a code, which is what laws are. Sometimes you'll see a sheet of paper that says a code of laws. Now, what is a code? Something that works. You know, a fire code, a plumbing code, an electrical code. So legislation is all about establishing a code, some type of order. The white supremacists are the masters of codification because they're the most successful people on the planet in getting things done. Because if you're going to get something done, you're going to need a code if you're going to get it in an orderly fashion. And a code is something that means when you do it, it always works. That plumbing code. They say, well, hey, and the plumbing in this building, I don't know if you're going to get hot water or not because it's not up to code. You get hot water sometimes, maybe. Okay, but if you get it up to code, you'll get hot water. And when you turn that spigot or that control mechanism, you can just, you get warm water if you turn it a certain way. And if you keep turning it, it'll get hotter. Now, that's a code. Somebody figured that out. How do you do that? That's not magic. That's a code. So that's what it's really all about, having a code for everything that you do so that you always get what? The most constructive results. The white supremacists understand that better than any of the people on the planet, particularly black people, who we don't have anything but trivial things codified.
Mr. Neely Fuller, in a war, we need allies. Some of those allies are going to have to be white people. What process should we go through to vet to see if whether these white people are going to be constructive for us?
Constructive or non-constructive? And by asking questions, how do you find out the difference between something constructive or non-constructive? It's really very simple. It's not complicated at all. Problem solving. And how are problems solved? All problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. So when a white person comes around and talks to a black person, tell you what I'm going to do. You listen and you say, now I have a question. See, because all problems are solved through questions and answers. This thing that you say you're going to do, is it going to be constructive or non-constructive? And if it's going to be constructive, how is it going to be constructive? And what is the procedure for doing this constructive thing that you say you want to help me to do, or that we are going to work together to do? What is going to be the constructive result? I want to know that before we even start. And that's when any white person talks to you ever about anything in the form of a proposal. What is going to be, guaranteed, the constructive result? See, these are questions we don't ask. But that's under codification. These are questions that are mandatory to ask. What's going to be the constructive? Charles, if you're on a first name basis, or Mr. Winthrop, if you're on that basis, or Mrs. Greenwood, if you're on that basis. Miss Greenwood, I'd like to ask you a question. This thing that you're proposing, if I do it or participate with you in doing it, what is going to be the constructive result? And wait for the answer. And don't argue with the answer. Just examine the answer that you got. Because a lot of times you will get an answer that's not an answer. If the person is a white supremacist, they are real good at that. They'll sound like they gave you the answer to your question, but they didn't. And even Neely Fuller, I mean, you have to watch him, but that's not on account of my intent. But even on this program, I have noticed down through the years, sometimes people will ask me a question, and I will not answer the question. Now, the white supremacists are very slick at that. They are very skilled. They'll sound like they answered the question, but they didn't answer the question. I've seen whole seminars like that. You go and spend 2 hours listening to a speaker, and you walk out, and if you really think about it, and very few black people will think, did I really learn anything? It seems like I did. But then on the other hand, I don't know no more than I did when I went through that seminar. But I spent 2 hours listening to someone who was very articulate. And, man, they went on, and I was spellbound by the things they were saying. But now that I'm walking out here in the sunlight and walking down the street, the closer I get to my car, by the time I get to my car and get in it, I ain't got no idea what they said. None of them. You got to watch that.
Got to watch it. All right, Daryl, thank you for your question, and don't be a stranger. Thank you very much. Okay, moving right along. Let's see if I can get this lady up here. Okay, Estelle, gotcha. You are on with Mr. Phil Fuller, and you can be heard worldwide. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby, and good morning, Neely Fuller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I was thinking about what Mr. Fuller had stated when he talked about, quote, a thinking black person, thinking black people. What I have noticed on jobs over the years, and many years, in a variety of things, from pushing brooms to working in offices, when white people, the white supremacists, know and listen to a person who's a thinking black person, I've watched how they ignore it, even when that thinking black person comes up with constructive solutions to a situation. My son also, who's been on college campuses, and he's offered some constructive solutions to everything from the environment to how you could end the spread of forest fires, expedite that quickly. And he's off. They shut them off quickly.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to understand, even for things, for example, they're thinking black people who have solutions to serious diseases like cancers that affect these white supremacists and white people in general. What logic?
So what would be your question for Mr. Fuller in all this?
My question is, why? Why would these people who are superior in their thinking want to exclude or ignore the thinking black person?
Good
who
question.
Could better solutions for even things they have to suffer through.
All righty. Good question. Mr. Fuller?
Because according to the white code, a black person is not supposed to be a problem solver. That's just the doctrine. You're black. I'm looking at you. You're black.
Right.
You're not supposed to be a problem solver. You're supposed to be a problem maker. And then I straighten you out since you made a problem. That's the way it's supposed to be. That gives me the three things that I want. That gives me fun, because I have fun doing that. It gives me glory, because I get a lot of credit for having done it, straighten you out. Okay? And I get material comfort, because I already have a lot of fun, a lot of glory, and a lot of material comfort that I give to myself as a white supremacist. So I don't need your little add-on as a competitor or potential competitor. Yeah, I know you can learn things if you apply yourself to it. I know you black people can do constructive things, but I don't want you to do anything constructive. That's my area of activity. You are supposed to be 100% non-constructive unless I'm around. And that's the deal. That's the only deal that I want. Otherwise, I'm going to eliminate you from this planet, walking around trying to be constructive with your black self. No, you're supposed to be a person that messes up everything, and then I'll come along in 15 minutes of your 15 years of messing up. In 15 minutes, I straighten it all out. That makes me great, and that makes you further nothing, which is what you are, because your grandparents and all of them, your ancestors, they weren't nothing either. That's why I stomped on them.
All righty.
So
thank you, Estelle, for calling.
Excuse me?
I said thank you for calling.
Yeah,
thank you for calling, and don't be a stranger. I'm getting that signal, Estelle, that I have to move it on. Okay. Thank you very much, Estelle, for calling. Okay. Listen, when you do call, make sure that you hit the button there. Ooh, we just lost somebody. Make sure that you hit the whole, or not the whole button, the press, the star button, or rather, wait, what is that? Oh, yeah, the number 1 button. There you go. That brother or sister that just called, I think you got disconnected while we were speaking with Estelle. If you call back, I'll have them forward you to the front here. You were accidentally cut off. That's technology. Listen, when you do call, though, make sure that you give the screener your name so I can properly give you an introduction to who we are speaking with. Until that caller comes back, Mr. Fuller, I'm going to paraphrase this person's question, TW, because it is rather long. But he said a summit on human intelligence took place at London University College in 2016, where the most formidable self-proclaimed white supremacists and eugenics attended, and they planned it then. Most of the people that will be killed off by the virus will be in Africa due to a medical infrastructure, and the U.S. in London inquiry is underway into why black people in London were 30% more affected and killed by COVID-19. For now, research shows the income disparity. Presidents in so-called Africa was forced to keep their borders open to wait for the virus for 2 months before locking down, that is, prisons get locked down in their countries. It's no surprise that Italy and Spain are where the bulk of Europeans wanted refugees are, and those were the countries the worst hit by the virus. The U.S. government is even making sure that Africans won't get help from China during their virtual peak, as Italy's rich northern region of Lombardy got by stampeding African social media with all sorts of propaganda against China and vice versa. It looks like, Mr. Fuller, that the man who used to call was right. He's speaking about the Extermination man. Remember him when we were on TalkTeamAtRadio.com? He would call in almost every week. Mr. Fuller.
Yes, I remember that.
That's who he's speaking about. When the Extermination man used to say that we were headed for extermination. So I guess that was his thing. I can't pronounce his name because it's kind of long, but he was mentioning that to you. Okay, let's see. There we go. That's his name, Shabaka. Sorry about that, bro. There you go, Shabaka. You were accidentally disconnected, but we got you on now, brother. Okay, and thank you, the Gatewood Brothers, for hooking that back up again. Shabaka, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
All right. Before we Africans encountered the deadly white race, we did not whip our children. Now, as I use the word African, I'm referring to all black people on this planet. Today, in the year 2020, approximately 85 to 95% of Africans believe that whipping children, spanking children, hitting children is acceptable and it is beneficial. However, all the science I have seen and all the science of which I have heard proves that hitting children is a destructive action. It causes children harm. Now, here's my question, Mr. Fuller. Using a codified response, should we Africans continue whipping our children, or should we Africans stop whipping our children?
Absolutely stop. If you're doing it, stop. Stop right now. Stop. The white supremacists believe in violence and death. That's a part of their entire philosophy of existence. Death is fun. That's why they love these mystery novels and whatnot. Who done it? I used to feast off of them. We're taught that. We're taught that somebody with a sword in his or her hand is a glorious person, but a person working in a hospital is also ran. They're a run-up and everything. A person who's trying to repair a person who's been damaged, mentally or physically. Yes, stop. They say spare the rod and spoil the child. Well, I'm not going to get into a religious argument and whatnot, but it's best, according to counter-racist code, to talk to people. That's people of any age. It's best to talk. And if a person doesn't know much of anything at all, you teach that person by talking. That's the best way to teach. Talking, explain things. And when the person asks questions, like young people ask thousands of questions if they're allowed to, they used to get the back of the hand from some people. Boy, you ask too many questions. There's no such thing as too many questions. That's how inventions are made. That's how progress comes from questions and answers. So you don't want to kill that. And if the person makes a mistake, you don't take their little hands and whip their hands. And like some of the teachers, not many, just a couple, when I was going to school, they'd bend my hand back and take a ruler and hit my hand because I made a mistake. That's not how to correct a mistake, but it's not really their fault. They were black teachers, but they were taught that violence is the way to handle everything. And a lot of black people pick up on that message. Handle everything by being violent. That's the way, you get frustrated about something, break a window, but get violent. Okay? So you don't want to send that message at an early age. I am very pleased because I haven't touched on that the caller asked that question. No, everywhere in the world now, everybody within the sound of my voice, codification, counter-racist codification, that came from them, in my opinion, on a large scale anyway. They may not have originated it, but it's something that should not be passed down not 1 inch more to any generation. No.
Alrighty.
The law of compensation, you talk. You explain things, reasons why, cause and effect. If you do this, this will be the result. If you do that, that will be the result. This is how you talk to young people or old people, if you can. If you can. And if you wait too late, it's going to be too late.
Yes, sir. Shabaka, thank you for that outstanding question. Do not be a stranger. Thank you very much. Ben, we're going to get to you after we have to do this. This is from Miss Jones, Mr. Fuller. She says, greetings. She said, I'm sitting down to listen to Tuesday's CRCS program when this man called you, Mr. Fuller, called your concept absurd. Too many people don't know what racism is. Mr. Fuller, can you cover this topic, please? Black people cannot and are not capable of racism. She has that in capital letters. Black people cannot and are not capable of racism yet. Thank you for all you do and for Produce Justice, Ms. Jones.
And the question is, can black people practice racism?
I said too many people don't know what racism is. Can you please
Racism is white supremacy. It's mistreatment of people based on color, and the people don't know what to do about it. That's when you are a successful racist. Now, there might be some black people who want to be racist because they want to they want to copy, just like we copy a lot of things. Well, being gangsters, that's not an original black idea, I don't think. It might be a universal idea, among the people of the planet in one form or another. But, the glorification of gangsterism, that's nothing but a cheap copy among black people of the white supremacists, who are the most successful gangsters that the world has ever seen. Okay, so you're not going to top that. It's feeble to even try, which is why black people just do it among ourselves. We don't take on them as a competitor. We know better than that because we know who Daddy is, okay? So we don't even try that. But black people cannot be racist because we are subject to racism. We were born in subjugation to racism. Some of us might want to be, like I just said. Some of us want to do the same thing to white people that white people have done to black people. No, that's not the way to go. We want a completely different world from what white people have even experienced.
Okay.
And that would be universal man and universal woman. This is explained in the textbook.
All right. Daryl says this, Mr. Fuller, since according to you, we're in a prison system, what, according to the code, would a prison riot look like by us as prisoners? Would it be like the protests and uprisings we see in the streets now, or something completely different?
When it is destructive of things or people who should not be destroyed. There are things that are destroyed in a riot. That's why the code book says don't participate in riots. Somebody starts breaking windows in a riot, in a demonstration and whatnot. The code says you don't be a part of that and get away from the scene because the demonstration is all over. You're sending a message through a demonstration, that's all, that you want some changes made and you're ready to negotiate. You're in a gangster situation. You're in a prison situation, so breaking things in the prison is just going to inconvenience you because you're going to be begging for a job in that very place that you burned down. Black people should stop that infantile stuff. That's infantile. That's childish. Turning over cars. Cars are expensive. That same car that you turned over, you might be able to get it on the used car market later on. Yeah, and be around there trying to pick up on some, get a little money from your grandmother's pension check in order to pay for it. So don't destroy things. Things can be used for constructive value. So don't take out your anger on things, all right, in this prison camp called the system of white supremacy.
Yes.
Supremacy is there. See, black people need to stop and think. A whole flood can come through a town. You see it right there on television and wipe out thousands of cars, all right, and businesses and houses all the time, year after year. And the white supremacists say, as long as we got white supremacy, we don't worry about that. We just build up. We go out there and make some more. So what? Small thing. So you breaking my window doesn't mean anything. All you did was just get yourself in trouble.
Okay. And our final Gmail question during this segment comes from Brian B1322. Says this, greetings, Mr. Fuller. Your show is becoming, or is coming really, really popular, and I continue to share. The reason why I write, I ask you for the movie list that Mr. Fuller has put together. Mr. Fuller, that movie list, I think it's up to almost 50 films or whatever. This person, Brian, wants to know, I guess he wants to get it, I guess by going to producejustice.com, but he wants the list. Is there any way that, is the list formulated, a movie list, and is there any way that the people can get it? Because a lot of people do ask for that list.
No, I could read it here on the air, but that would take up the whole program.
Yeah, we don't want to do
that. So
I
can't do that. So it's just one of those things. I've had to keep putting it on the back burner on putting it up on the website. But many people, since I first mentioned it, have asked about that.
Yeah.
And I really want it up there. But I just haven't, I'm so pressed for time and getting to be even more so. So I just have to apologize to people because I've been trying to do that for about 7 years now. It's a simple thing, but I can't find the time, And like I said, I can't read it on the air because that would take up the whole 2 hours, and particularly if I'm explaining why it's on the list.
Yeah.
All right? But it's about 40 movies. But in the interim, you can look at some principal movies. I'll say Shawshank Redemption, Casablanca. Casablanca is my favorite. The Godfather 1 and 2 for sure. All right? And then there are some that are, the average person wouldn't see where, well, what is that on the list for? Well, like Picnic, a movie made in the 1950s with Kim Novak and William Holden. He said that's all about some white people in a small town, and their little nonsense and whatnot. But there are lessons in it. A Trip to Bountiful. And then one of my favorites, D-Day, 6th of June. There's mostly very little D-Day action in it. This was at the tail end of the movie. The invasion of Normandy, and which was covered pretty well in Saving Private Ryan, which is also on the list. But there are lessons in the interrelationships between people that I think are important to learn in an entertaining manner, and something that females would enjoy, because it shows it's mostly about sacrifice and being disappointed.
Okay.
Because black people have a lot of disappointments. But
all right,
I'll try to get that movie up in the future, that movie list up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fuller. Okay, let me do this. Hey, go ahead and start the music so I could do this so we can have a little more time at the end. Okay, you are now listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. And if you would like to get in contact with the show, 516-453-9921. Make sure you press the number 1 button and you will fit right into the caller rotation. Again, 516-453-9921. Now, you can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y. But it probably will not be read today, but at some point in time it will be read. I will give you the date and the time as I am reading your Gmail. So just keep that in mind. Okay, again, you're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and me as co-host, Mr. Bobby. Ben and Ishmael, I will get to you, but I have to do 2 things first, and then I will get to you. Okay, thank you, producers, for the music. Mr. Fuller, Raj wanted to know this. It says, Mr. Fuller, you once stated that your compensatory reparation plan was comprised of 4 elements: making sure housing is provided, along with transportation, free health care, and education for all slave descendants in the United States of America. With that stated, when it comes to education, what is the best strategy to educate a prisoner of war? As well, how do we go about educating or unconfusing the prominent miseducated?
Well, that if I recall correctly, I don't recall exactly saying it the way it's being said now. I just talk about, when people talk about reparations, I say the compensatory code directs us to the thinking of reparations not being in any kind of narrow framework of any kind, but everything that has to do with constructive activity. Everything. I think we should think at that level when we talk about reparations for black people, reparations for segregation, quote unquote, slavery, quote unquote, racism, quote unquote, but repairing the damage that is done, and also opening up everything that can possibly be realized in a world in which is constantly expanding. That's repair. We're in a constant state of repairing because we are damaged people right from the beginning. We're damaged right out of the womb. So we're talking about a massive repair job. And it doesn't come down to any payoff for everybody lining up at a pay window and receiving some money to go out and spend until it all runs out, which it will very quickly. No, nothing like that. We're talking about the end of racism. That's the kind of repair job we're talking about. The entire system of racism being dismantled and replaced with a system of justice in all areas of activity, and that would mean a repair job that means black people all over the planet engaged in nothing but the most constructive of activities that have ever been imagined and enjoying it all the way. Because a lot of black people have said to me, well, Fuller, it looks like what you're saying is that, you're taking all the joy out of life. I mean, with this code business and all like that. I mean, it sounds like it's so oppressive. It sounds like it's going to cramp everybody's style that, actually is going to eliminate freedom to have your own thoughts and do your own thing and all like that. No, codification is just the reverse of that. But we have been brainwashed, you might say, by the white supremacists, which is what they've successfully done, to believe that if you're doing something of constructive value, it can't be fun. So they separate things that are constructive from things that they say are fun. Mm-hmm. When black people think of fun, we have been trained to think of, well, now it's fun time, which means let's do a whole bunch of things that make absolutely no sense at all. And we have been taught that. But it is, if we just try it, you can be constructive, and if we just tap into that just a little bit, we will find from experience that you can do many constructive things or all constructive things and have a lot of fun as a result of it. Okay. Just in the process of doing it. Not to say anything about the result of doing it, because that's going to be constructive. The results are.
All righty. Transcended, I will get to yours maybe before the end of the show, but right now, let's see. We're going to go worldwide. And Ben, hey, we got you, Ben. Go ahead. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Bobby. So, Mr. Fuller, you talked about how we should make observation, and one of the things I've been doing is I realized what the book said about non-white people actually engaging in show-offism. It's almost like it's becoming the business of the non-white people of the planet. How well can they show off? Now, can you or will you explain what the book said about showing off in the system of white supremacy?
Good question, Ben.
Right. There's 4 of them, and I got them here in the textbook. In fact, I got it annotated somewhere. Let's see now. Where is that?
Yeah, and what page? I can follow you also if you know it.
Right. Okay. Well, in the original, the four show-offisms are page 41.
Oh, okay.
Right. In the original copy, and I got quite a few papers here on my desk.
Okay,
but
the
here
four
they are.
show-offisms?
Yes, the four basic show-offisms among the victims of racism. They are as follows, and they are also in the 2016 edition, too, and much more elaborate. But number one, showing off to each other the things that white people have allowed them to obtain, allowed us to obtain.
Okay.
That's number one.
Number two?
Number two, showing off to each other the information that white people have allowed us to obtain. Number three, showing off to each other our ability to belittle each other. You know, we do that all day. I mean, put each other down.
Yes.
And we think that's fun. All right? One black person putting another black person down in the barber shop, in the beauty parlor, I mean, on the little sassy TV programs we see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just belittling each other.
Okay.
We go on sometimes with a white person back and forth, orchestrating the whole thing like they're monitors, and black people going at each other. You've seen those television programs. I'm not going to name them, but you know them. Lots of them.
Number four,
showing off to each other the ability to make sexual impressions on each other. Now, those are the four big ones. Showing off the things, showing off the information that you get. I know more than you. How many times you hear one black person telling another black person that? Oh, you don't know nothing. I've been here. I've been there. I know this. I know that. Well, whatever you learned it from the white supremacists. All right?
Okay.
Showing off the ability to belittle each other, that's number three. And we do that all day long. We think that's fun. Making the other black person feel bad. That usually leads to what? An argument.
An argument,
and then what? To a fight.
To a fight.
And then what? Then killing.
Somebody gets killed.
Oh, yeah. See, we're killing each other all the time, coming from belittling each other. You know, I can out-talk you. I can put you down. All right? I can do this better than you.
And that fourth one, I'm writing it down.
And that fourth one,
sexual
impressions on each other.
Impressions,
which,
okay.
Yeah, strutting around. I mean, I got 15 women, and or nowadays, I mean, I might have, well, ain't no telling what I might have. All right. But, nowadays, I mean, the last 20 years or so, I mean, that's really a mess. But, I mean, it's all about, parading up and down the street. Look at my sexuality, whatever it is nowadays that you call sex. I mean, and I want you to see it, and ain't this nice, and ain't this the greatest thing that was ever invented, all right, making sexual impressions basically on each other.
Okay.
And after that, we don't know what to do with our time and energy.
No. All right, Brother Ben, thank you for your call. Don't be a stranger. Let me do this. Get right here. Okay. Ishmael, you're worldwide with Mr. Neely Fuller. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Mr. Bobby. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. My one question to Mr. Fuller is, what is the one most constructive thought or action you have found to do in your life that has produced the best result?
Truth. Truth. In other words, black people talk about truth. We call it telling it like it is. All right? But we are people who are absolutely panicky of anything that's true and constructive, or admitting our weaknesses in the system of white supremacy. That's really one that panics us, because we like to pretend that we're strong. when we're real weak. The first step, because logically speaking, following the code, to becoming strong is to recognize that you're weak. That's why people go to the gym. Somebody mentioned common sense earlier in the program. And that's right in your face. When you go to school, you are admitting what? That you are ignorant. The first step toward not being ignorant is to learn. But many black people like to strut around acting like they know everything and getting embarrassed when they have to say, I don't know. I think it was Mark Twain that once made the remark. And one of the first things they taught us when I went to the in the Air Force, it was in an Air Force manual, a quote by Mark Twain. It said, I was proud to be able to answer promptly, and I did. I said I didn't know. Now that makes perfect sense. If you don't know, say you don't know, because that's the first step toward finding out. Every genius started out saying, you know what, I don't know what I should know, which means I got to find out what I ought to know in order to invent this thing that I want to invent. I want to invent something that will help a person to fly. Now, since I have never seen that happen, I'm going to figure out how that's done. And I know people are going to say it can't be done because it ain't never been done. But you know what? I'm going to get in my bicycle shop, and I'm going to figure out a way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And somebody did it. That's an example.
That's an example. Okay.
The first step toward becoming smart is to recognize that you're ignorant and being willing to say so. Walk right into a crowd of geniuses and say, I don't know nothing. And you know what will happen? If those geniuses are willing to tell you everything that they know, you will be smarter than all of the geniuses that you talk to. Why? Because mathematically speaking, if you're talking to 10 geniuses and you learn everything that they know, that means you are smarter than all of them put together, because you know what each one of them knows now.
Okay.
But black people got to adopt that formula. Why? Because this works. That's why.
It works.
Adopt
okay.
something that works.
Ishmael, thank you for calling, and do not be a stranger. Thank you very much. Mr. Fuller, Translucent, for clarification, says this from the chat room. Is Mr. Fuller stating that the white supremacist racist will prefer to ignore constructive solutions even if it helps white people?
Oh, if it helps, they will ignore your contribution coming from you. But 10 years later, it will show up in some laboratory somewhere and have some white person's name on it. Now, they're good at that, too. Oh, yeah, they're the best thieves in the world. Okay. Oh, yeah. They do that. They do a lot of it because they know that even among the most backward of people, there are some people who know something that's very essential for that time. But that person died without ever being recognized as the person that came up with the idea or with the formula or with the problem. See, all people can solve problems, but they have to use their minds to do so. The white supremacists go all over the world, and they look and listen and study everything. And if they run across a black person who shows some particular potential, if that black person was in another environment, but they will guarantee that that person does not get in that environment, and they will steal from that person's mind, all right, and take it to do what? Strengthen the system of white supremacy. And the person will never know that idea came from him or her, that black person.
All right. Thank you for the chat, Transcendent. Before we go to Bill, and Bill, I'm going to get to you. It's 10:45, so this is the time we set aside for Mr. Fuller to speak about that wonderful book. Mr. Fuller, go ahead for a few moments and speak about your book.
Yes, you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of the contents of the textbook, and along with the title, which is a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and action for victims of white supremacy. Now, a lot of black people say, well, I ain't no victim of no white supremacy. Nobody tells me what to do. I'm my own person. Well, if you believe that, and you can make that functionally true, more power to you. But this is for people who believe that they are victims of white supremacy and that they have been deterred in some way from making what they consider to be constructive progress because of the deterrence of a system called racism. And so it's supposed to help you to think, to speak, and to act. When I say think and speak, I mean, and then when you are in a situation, economics, education, entertainment, politics, religion, sex, war, when you're in any of these situations, it comes down to what you do, what you say, because everything is about doing and saying after you do the thinking. It's about what you do and say in all of these areas of activity, and what you don't do, and what you do not say. And there's some outlines, not all, nowhere near all, but guides in the way to go, so that you will know what to do and what to say and what not to do and what not to say in every situation, as long as you're in the system of white supremacy, and help to evolve out of it and actually destroy the system. Because when you evolve out of the system, when you become what you call a full-fledged counter-racist, it means racism is being destroyed just by what you do and say each and every day. Right there in front of their eyes, their whole operation is coming apart. That's what the code book is supposed to help you do. And you can get it by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com.
And Transcendent said that she really that they really appreciated your clarification on that. Okay, I'm gonna make you holler just a little bit. Let's see if I can get him up here. Okay, here we go. Bill, you can be heard worldwide. You are on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Bobby. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, and good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
What I would wanted to Mr. Fuller to speak about, I know he has touched on it today, which was in the sense of reparations. And this is what I'm saying. Since wealth is a major problem for American descendants of slavery and other blacks around the world, and according to the latest data by Professor William Darity and his wife at Duke University, the money owed by our government to the American descendants of slavery is the only thing that will begin the process to end racism and end the wealth gap that is between white Americans and black Americans, especially American descendants of slavery. So my question is, do you think wealth for American descendants of slavery can begin to end the racism that is prevalent in our society today?
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
Depending on what you mean by wealth. And what wealth means to me, to people who don't have wealth, first of all, is how do you get wealth? You get wealth by knowing what to do and what not to do. Everything is about doing. What to do and what not to do, and have all the keys to that knowledge in economics, in education, in entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. You do the most constructive things in all of those 9 areas of activity, and you have wealth. Now, that is what black people need. And this cash money won't do it. In fact, we shouldn't have cash. It won't work. It won't work for the job that needs doing. What will work? Think about this. All the things that cash will buy. The queen, I understand, of most places where they have kings and queens, where they still have royalty, I understand they don't carry money. They're not trying to get money. They have everything that what? Money will buy. So who needs money when you have everything that money will buy?
Does
That's
it cost
worth
money
anything.
to have this show?
Hello?
Does it cost us money to have this show that we have today that you're speaking about? Are you able to do this show without any type of money? Are you able to open up any type of business without money? Are you able to afford different health care and political wealth? Are you able to do those things without capital, which is money that is owed? So you can buy every piece of the 9 areas to put yourself in a good position.
No. I need money the way it's set up because the white supremacists determine they are the masters of money, and they are the masters of me. So the white supremacists determine the value of money. There are black people all over the world who have money, but the white supremacists determine what you can buy and what you can't buy and how much it's going to be. So the white supremacists, very easily, they're the masters of money. They know everything that there is to know about money better than anybody. Black people think that if they get some money, that now they have real power. No, power is power over people. The white supremacists, if we understand the system of white supremacy, has absolute power over all the non-white people. So anything that the white supremacists give me, they can take away from me. So they'll give me millions of dollars today, and they already got it figured out how they're going to get every dime of it back. Or they will just let me have it and hold it and still go up on the price on everything that matters where I can't buy it anyway with the money that I got, which is what they do with black people all over the world. They just keep raising the price because... And when the black people complain and say, hey, you're rigging my economy, or you're destroying my economy, my people are starving, etc. And the white supremacists said, yeah, which means you got to constantly beg me. They say, well, my money was worth such and such. I could buy onions yesterday. Now, for some mysterious reason, through something called some kind of stock market and whatnot, now I can't buy onions today. Why is this? I say, because I'm a white supremacist and I can do that. I can rig everything. Your money will be worth everything today and be worth absolutely nothing tomorrow. Why? Because I am master over you. See, black people can't understand we're the most important money in the world. I'm talking about a person is money. If I master you, I master everything that you have. We need to think about that. If I am your master, I master everything that you have.
Bill, I thank you for your call. Do not be a stranger. Okay, Mr. Fuller, let's see here as we wind the show down. Rachel says this, Mr. Fuller, I heard about how white supremacist groups are practicing racism during this time. They are intentionally discussing ways to infect non-white people, COVID-19. They are even planning a race war. We don't even antagonize these things, but they are excited about killing people who are classified as non-whites. As victims of white supremacy, what are some suggestions that you would make to help quell this need for a race war, and how do we stop all people from thinking this is a good practice? And how is, well, just answer one question at a time. I'm getting ready to see what I'm getting ready to get into. First of all, let's see. What are some suggestions that you would make to help quell this need for a race war?
We're already in the race war, and we've already been losing all the time. We are prisoners of war. The white supremacists have completed that.
Okay.
A long time ago, before any of us was born. If you're black on this planet, you are a prisoner of war. That war was settled a long time ago. It's not any so-called race war that's coming. We have to understand that. We have already lost up to this point. But there's a thing about loss. You haven't lost until you give up trying to not be a loser. See, as long as you exist, you try, if you're a prisoner of war, you try to get out of the prison. And you try to destroy the prison.
Like Andy
and replace
Dufresne
it with
did.
something that's not a prison. But there's no way. It's not any war that's coming. A lot of black people say war is going to come on black people. That war, we need to look at the war the way it really is. We are already prisoners of war. We have been taken into captivity before we were born. It's not a black person on this planet that wasn't born in prison. A prisoner of war, P-O-W. When somebody asks you, well, what about the prisoners of war? You say, I'm one. If you're black, you're automatically one. So the whole idea is just to get rid of, you have counter war. That's what the code calls it. And you do that through codification.
Okay, then the second question quickly. How do we stop all people from thinking this is a good practice?
That what is a good practice?
Quell the need for a race war. How do we get people, she said, how do we get people to stop thinking like that?
Simply say what I've said. We are already prisoners of war. But we are still at war because people are still resisting our captors.
Okay.
As long as you're still resisting your captors, the war is not over. But it's no such thing. They can, as far as killing is concerned, you can kill a bunch of prisoners anytime you want to. We're prisoners of war.
That's
the prison masters can walk through the prison yard and kill all the prisoners if they want to. They don't want to do that. That puts them out of business.
Okay, and finally, how as victims do we prepare ourselves?
Through codification.
Through codification.
You prepare yourself for anything by finding out the things to do and the things not to do, the things to say and the things not to say that will make your situation a situation that no longer exists as it is and the situation that you should have.
All right.
Which is a world of universal man and universal woman.
Okay.
But you got to get rid of racism to do it.
Okay, that's going to take care of it today. We did the stops. We did racist sexual confusion. We did trashy, tacky, and terroristic, fun, glory, and material games, and then the show-off isms. We did those things. Mary Tahiti, I'll have to get to you maybe next week. Thanks for your Gmails. For all of you who listened to today's show, thank you. Callers, thank you. Mr. Fuller, thank you. The Gatewood Brothers, thank you. We look forward to seeing you next week. Everybody have a nice weekend. Everybody. Right. Goodbye.
ProduceJustice.com.